So at Edge Hill University, we use ePortfolio workbooks across both our undergraduate and postgraduate programs to scaffold students towards evidence in their learning outcomes, clinical competencies, and recording engagement with both their clinical and academic supervisors. We decided to use PebblePad to digitalise the academic project registration process by creating a workbook that requires multiple points of engagement. We provided bespoke training sessions to academic supervisors, clinical supervisors, and administrators through a series of face-to-face and online tutorials. Firstly, the first step in the process is the student has to access the auto-submit workbook to complete the project registration form, which is a series of multi-line text fields. We use the mandatory field property setting and encourage students to use the progress tracking tool to ensure they meet all the requirements. We use the workbook page reports to see which students have completed the forms, and for the tutor, the ability to check the responses regularly enabled her to provide general formative feedback to the class as a whole, rather than having to spend a lot of time reviewing individual submissions, while still being able to highlight any students that are yet to engage. Once the project registration is completed, the module tutor will allocate an academic supervisor, which is recorded on the workbook page. This provides the contact details of the supervisor to each student and also informs the administrators which supervisor is allocated to which student, and this is the information they needed to be able to create the SEP membership. Following this, the academic supervisor will access the project registration form to review. And once any formative feedback has been actioned, they confirm that they've met with the student to discuss the project and approve through the use of a radio button. The next step in the process is for the academic supervisor. Following the academic supervisor is for the clinical supervisor. They're invited to review the project and leave any formative comments of their own in a multi-line text field that's set as an assessor field. The clinical tutor then approves the project, declaring it's technically and clinically accurate and represents safe practice. The project is then subject to internal moderation by an independent academic, so not the module tutor and not the academic supervisor. And once reviewed, the project can go through to the final registration. PebblePad enables transparency with the student so they can see where the project registration is up to at every step of the process. And lastly, the administrative team registered the project details in the workbook. The admin team have found PebblePad much clearer as all the information is typed, and paperwork has been reduced as there's now no need to scan and store forms securely. This approach has significantly reduced email traffic between academics and administrators and students. It eliminated emails being sent with multiple versions of the same document between the student and both their academic and clinical supervisors. On the whole, the process has become much more intuitive. The process is clear to all involved as each field is labelled with who is meant to engage with it. It's also a lot less time consuming. The tutor has oversight of where each student is up to in one report, making it simpler to identify students that need further support, but also to identify if any of the clinical tutors are not engaging with the student as expected. Communication with the student is quick and effective through the use of comments. When reviewing the workbook, the tutor can leave formative feedback comments, for example, amending the project dates to ensure they're realistic. The student could simply reply "done" to the comment, so the tutor knew that the formative feedback had been actioned and that the forms were ready to review. The admin team who review and register the projects have access to the workbook, making it much more quicker than the previous paper-based systems. Navigating through a specific student's workbook was a lot easier than sifting through multiple email threads for information, to respond to queries, and to check everything had been completed. So what did our students say? They said there was no risk of losing their evidence as it's online. Students liked the forms being digital, and through submitting through Atlas, they could see any changes and a record of the engagement, as both the assessors' comments were date and time stamped, so they knew when it had actually been actioned as to whenever they told them it had been actioned. They also said it's a great way to store evidence not using multiple pieces of paper. The process aligned with the clinical competencies ePortfolio, meaning there was then no need to complete any paper-based forms. It also removed the need to chase their clinical tutors to sign paper face-to-face. The tutors could view the forms asynchronously and sign at a time that suited them. So what did we learn? We learned it's vital to build the students' digital competence during the induction week. So we started with an introduction to the platform, setting activities in the workbook to be completed, and followed up with a series of online and face-to-face support sessions, including late evenings for students that had been in theatre. Many students would say the typical "I'm not tech savvy," but after familiarising themselves with the platform, overall everybody was okay completing the workbook, and general feedback was all positive. Although digital competence was important, we also found it's important to build the confidence of the students actually using the technology. So in terms of resources, at Edge Hill we have a learning technologist dedicated to supporting the medical school's use of PebblePad, something that we don't have in place for every faculty. In addition, it required the support of the module tutor, administrative teams, both clinical and academic supervisors, for the management of resources, creation of external accounts and sets. There's also the factor of time. The process of setting up the workbook, testing the workflows, training and implementation was initially time-consuming. We provided bespoke support materials and responded to queries as they came in, with the academics and administrators picking up any content queries and myself dealing with any sort of technical side of how to use the platform. But if there's one thing we have learnt, it's to start at the end. Have a clear idea of what you want the students to get out of the workbook and anything you need to get out of the workbook as well. Know what you'd like to run reports on and start your build backwards from there. If you've got any questions or would like to discuss anything further, please give me a shout. Thank you.